Your emergency fund might be too big. Yes, really. I know how that sounds. For years, every financial guru, grandma, and well-meaning uncle has told you that cash is king and you need a massive pile of it to be safe. But there is a tipping point. Beyond a certain specific number, every extra dollar of cash you hoard isn't making you safer. It is actually making your long-term finances worse. It is dead weight that is quietly losing purchasing power to inflation and costing you tens of thousands of dollars in missed opportunities. Most people view their emergency fund as a badge of honor. I view an oversized fund as a leak in the hull of your financial ship. Today, we are going to fix that leak. We are going to calculate the exact mathematical ceiling for your cash buffer, so you can stop hoarding and start building real wealth. This isn't about being reckless. I am not telling you to drain your accounts and bet it all on crypto. This is about optimization. It is about finding that sweet spot where you sleep like a baby at night, but your money is still working the day shift. If you are new here, my name is Tom, and I obsess over the fine print of personal finance so you don't have to. If you want to get smarter with your money without being bored to tears, go ahead and subscribe. It is the best return on investment you will get on your time today. Now, let's look at why the standard advice of saving 6 to 12 months of expenses blindly might actually be the wrong move for your specific situation. Let's establish the baseline. If you look at the major institutions, they all sing from the same hymn sheet. Vanguard, Wells Fargo, Morgan Stanley, they all generally converge on the same rule of thumb. They say you need 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Some conservative planners might push that to 12 months if you are self-employed. And that is good advice if you are starting from zero. In fact, Vanguard research shows that the first $2,000 you save provides a massive 21% boost to your financial well-being. But here is where the nuance gets lost. People hear 3 to 6 months and they think, well, 12 months must be double the safety, and 24 months must be quadruple the safety. That is where the logic breaks down. Safety has diminishing returns, but the cost of that safety, the price you pay for holding that cash, rises linearly. Let's dig into the first major problem with the oversized fund, the silent killer known as inflation. There is a pervasive myth that a savings account is a risk-free zone. You put $1 in, and a year later the dollar is still there, maybe with a few pennies of interest. It feels safe because the number doesn't go down. Unlike the stock market, which flashes red and gives you anxiety, your bank balance looks stable. But this stability is an illusion. In nominal terms, sure, your balance is steady. But in real terms, meaning what that money can actually buy at the grocery store or the gas pump, your savings account is often a slow-motion car crash. When you hold too much cash, you are voluntarily exposing yourself to a guaranteed loss of purchasing power. You are effectively paying a subscription fee to the bank to hold your money, paid in the form of inflation. Let's run the math, because this is where feelings get hurt by facts. Suppose you are getting a decent rate on your savings, say 4%. That sounds great compared to the 0% days of the past. But if inflation is running at 5%, your real return is -1%. You are losing wealth. Roxburgh Financial puts it perfectly. If your savings rate is lower than inflation, your money is shrinking. It is a mathematical certainty. Let's project this out. If you lose just 1% of purchasing power per year, after a decade, you haven't just stayed flat. You have lost about 10% of your real wealth. If that gap widens to 2%, you are looking at nearly 20% of your value gone. Poof! Vanished into thin air. That $50,000 emergency fund you are so proud of? In 10 years of bad inflation, it might only buy $40,000 worth of goods. You didn't spend it, but it's gone anyway. The reason we let this happen is simple psychology. human brains are wired to react to immediate threats, not slow erosion. If someone stole $5,000 out of your checking account today, you would be furious. You would call the police. But if inflation steals $5,000 of value from your emergency fund over 5 years, you shrug. It is invisible. We prioritize the feeling of safety today over the reality of security tomorrow. We treat cash as a security blanket. The thicker the blanket, the safer we feel. But in economics, that blanket is made of ice, and it is slowly melting. We are so afraid of the volatility of the market, where prices jump up and down, that we run into the arms of the guaranteed slow loss of cash. It is a safety bias that ends up costing us dearly. Now, losing value to inflation is bad enough. It is like a slow leak in your tire. But there is a second problem with having an emergency fund that is too big. And this one isn't a slow leak. It is a slashed tire. While your cash is busy losing 1 or 2% a year to inflation, it is also missing out on the 5, 7, or 8% gains it could have made elsewhere. This is the double whammy. You are not just losing ground, you are missing the boat entirely. This is called opportunity cost. And when you actually calculate the dollar amount over a decade, it is enough to make you physically ill. Let's look at a concrete example of how much this safety is actually costing you. The myth here is that I will invest it later. Or maybe you tell yourself, this extra cash is just dry powder waiting for a crash. But let's be honest, for most of us, that extra $20,000 or $30,000 sitting in a high-yield savings account isn't dry powder. It is lazy money. It has no job. Morgan Stanley explicitly warns that once your adequate buffer is in place, additional cash must be put to work. If it is sitting idle, it is unemployed capital. You wouldn't hire an employee and let them sit in the break room for 10 years doing nothing while you pay them a salary. Yet that is exactly what you are doing with your excess cash. You are paying the salary of inflation, and the money is doing absolutely no work for you. It is just sitting there, gathering dust and losing value. Let's put a price tag on this. Suppose you have $50,000 in your emergency fund, but your actual expenses are just $3,000 a month. A 6-month buffer, which is very healthy, is $18,000. That means you have $32,000 of excess cash sitting there just in case. Let's fast forward 10 years. Scenario A. You leave that extra $30,000 in cash. Even with interest, after inflation, let's say it shrinks in real value to about $27,000. You lost purchasing power. Scenario B. You invested that surplus. Even a modest, boring portfolio returning 5% real returns, that is, after inflation, would turn that $30,000 into nearly $50,000 of purchasing power. The gap between those two numbers? It is roughly $20,000. By being overly safe, you didn't just save money. You effectively lit 20 grand on fire. That is the price of your comfort. Is sleeping a little better at night worth $20,000? Maybe. But you need to realize that is the bill you are paying. This stems from a concept called loss aversion. Psychologically, the pain of losing $100 in the stock market feels twice as bad as the joy of gaining $100. So we hoard cash to avoid the pain of seeing a red arrow on our investment app. We view the zero loss of a savings account as a win, but we fail to account for the invisible loss of opportunity. Financial planner Eric Roberge calls this having too much of a good thing. We are so focused on protecting the downside that we completely eliminate the upside. We forget that in the long run, the biggest risk to your retirement isn't a stock market crash. The biggest risk is not having enough growth to pay for your life when you're 80. Oversized cash buffers increase that long-term risk significantly, all while trying to reduce short-term anxiety. The solution here is a mindset shift. You need to stop looking at that excess money as an extended emergency fund. You need to label it correctly. It is idle capital. And idle capital is a wasted resource. The protocol is simple. Determine your actual need and then evict the rest of the money from your savings account. It needs to go get a job. It needs to be working in bonds or stocks or real estate or something that historically outpaces inflation. As Hartford Funds points out, stocks and bonds have historically destroyed cash over long periods. Keeping money on the sidelines might prevent you from losing money in a sharp downturn next week, but it guarantees you lose the game over the next decade. So, how do we find the exact number? How do we calculate the line between safety and waste? This brings us to the most critical part of this video. We need to calculate your specific sleep well at night number, or your SWAN number. This isn't a random guess. It is a personalized calculation based on your life, not a generic rule of thumb from a blog post written in 2010. Most people get this wrong because they guess. They pick a round number like 10,000 or 50,000 because it feels good. But feelings are not math. We are going to build a formula that accounts for your job stability, your family size, and your fixed obligations. This is how the pros at places like Veracity Financial Planning and huge banks assess risk. We are going to apply that same rigor to your checking account. The myth we need to crush here is that everyone needs the same 6 months of expenses. That is nonsense. If you are a tenured professor with a paid-off house, 6 months of cash is wildly excessive. If you are a freelance graphic designer with 3 kids and a high mortgage, 6 months might be reckless. The 3 to 6 months rule is an average, and averages are dangerous. If you stand with 1 foot in a bucket of ice and 1 foot in a fire, on average you are comfortable. But in reality, you are in trouble. Your emergency fund needs to be tailored to your specific volatility. A government employee and a commission-only salesperson are living in 2 different financial universes. They should not have the same savings strategy. Here is step 1 of the SWAN Formula. You need to calculate your bare bones essentials. This is not your current spending. This is your apocalypse mode spending. If you lost your job tomorrow, you are not going to the movies and you are not ordering sushi. You are paying rent, utilities, insurance, basic groceries, and minimum debt payments. Write that number down. For many people, their $3,000 a month lifestyle is actually only $1,800 of essentials. This distinction is huge. An emergency fund is for emergencies, not for maintaining a luxury lifestyle during a crisis. If you base your multiplier on your inflated spending, your fund will be bloated. Calculate the bare minimum needed to keep the lights on and the creditors away. That is your base variable. Step 2 is choosing your multiplier. This is where we look at your income stability. If you have a stable corporate job, or you are a dual income household where it is unlikely both of you get fired on the same day, your multiplier is 3 or 4. That is it. 3 or 4 months of essential expenses. That aligns with Veracity Financial and MCB guidance for stable earners. However, if you are a single earner with dependents, or you work in a volatile industry like tech startups or construction, your risk is higher. You bump that multiplier to 6. If you are self-employed, a freelancer, or a business owner, you are in the high-risk zone. Your income can drop to 0 overnight. Your multiplier is 9 to 12. So, you take your bare bones number and multiply it by your risk factor. Essentials times multiplier equals SWAN. That is your number. If the math says 12,000 and you are holding 30,000, you are oversaving. Once you have that SWAN number, write it down. Put it on a sticky note. That is your ceiling. Anything below that number, you are in accumulation mode. Every spare dollar goes to savings. But the moment you hit that number plus $1, you stop. You are done. You have filled the bucket. You don't keep pouring water into a full bucket. It just spills over and makes a mess. The protocol is to treat this number as a hard limit. Unless you have a specific known expense coming up, like a down payment or a wedding, there is zero justification for holding cash above this calculated ceiling. It requires discipline to stop saving, which sounds weird, but stopping saving is actually starting investing. And that is the graduation day for your money. Now, you might be thinking, Tom, what is the harm in having a little extra, just for peace of mind? Well, let's talk about the price of that peace of mind. There is fascinating research from Vanguard on financial well-being that quantifies exactly how much happiness money buys you, and the results are shocking. It turns out the relationship between cash on hand and financial anxiety is not a straight line. It is a curve that flattens out remarkably fast. You might think doubling your savings doubles your peace of mind, but the data says you are wrong. Let's look at where the actual happiness peak is, so you don't waste years chasing a feeling that money can't buy. Here is the data. Vanguard found that going from zero savings to having just $2,000 in the bank is massive. It boosts your perceived financial well-being by 21%. That is huge. That is the difference between panic and breathing room. Then, building that up to cover 3 to 6 months of expenses adds another 13% bump in well-being. So far, so good. But here is the kicker. Beyond that 3 to 6 month range, the curve flattens. Adding another 6 months of cash doesn't make you feel twice as safe. It barely moves the needle on your psychological security. You are chasing a ghost. You are paying thousands of dollars in opportunity cost for a psychological benefit that barely exists. You are effectively buying insurance that you don't need and that doesn't even make you feel better. This is a classic case of diminishing returns. Think of it like eating cake. The first slice is amazing. The second slice is good. The 10th slice makes you sick. Cash is the same way. The first $10,000 is life-changing security. The 10th $10,000 is just numbers on a screen. If you are stressed about money while holding 6 months of expenses, the solution isn't more cash. The solution is dealing with your anxiety or fixing your income streams. More cash won't solve a mindset problem. Oversaving is often a symptom of financial trauma or deep-seated insecurity, not a rational financial strategy. We tell ourselves we are being prudent, but we are actually being fearful. And fear is an expensive investment advisor. It keeps you on the sidelines while the rest of the world moves forward. So how do you know if you are in this trap? Ask yourself, if I added another $5,000 to this account, would my life change? If the answer is no, you are done. You have reached the point of diminishing returns. You need to recognize that safety has a cost. Every day that money sits there, it is costing you future freedom. It is costing you the compound interest that pays for your retirement. Real safety isn't having a pile of cash that is slowly rotting. Real safety is having a portfolio of assets that is growing faster than inflation. That is the only way to protect your purchasing power in the long run. We need to shift our definition of safety from hoarding to growing. Okay, so we have established that you probably have too much cash. We have calculated your SWAN number, and you have realized you have an extra 10, 20, or 50 grand lying around. Now comes the million-dollar question. Where does it go? This is where people freeze. They think the only alternative to a savings account is gambling on volatile tech stocks. That is false. There is a middle ground. There is a way to deploy that cash that keeps it relatively safe, but protects it from inflation. We are going to break down the bucket strategy for your excess capital, so you can move that money without having a panic attack. The biggest barrier to moving excess cash is binary thinking. We tend to think our money is either safe in the bank or at risk in the casino of the stock market. But the financial world is a spectrum, not a coin flip. There are asset classes designed specifically for money that you might need in 2 to 4 years. Money that shouldn't be in cash, but also shouldn't be in high-risk stocks. If you are hoarding cash because you might buy a house in 3 years, you are doing it wrong. You are letting inflation eat your down payment. There are better tools for that job. We need to match the time horizon of the money to the investment vehicle. That is the golden rule of allocation. Here is the breakdown. You have your SWAN fund, that stays in cash or a cash equivalent. That is for emergencies happening this month. For money you don't need for 1 to 3 years, your excess, you look at short-term bonds, treasury bills or CDs. These instruments are designed to preserve capital while fighting inflation. They aren't going to make you rich, but they stop the bleeding. They are the tourniquet for your purchasing power. Then, for money you don't need for 5 years or more, that belongs in a diversified portfolio of stocks and bonds. This is where you beat inflation. This is where you build wealth. American Century and Hartford funds both emphasize this. Time in the market beats timing the market. If you are keeping 10-year money in a savings account, you are using a hammer to drive a screw. It is the wrong tool. Segment your money by time. Less than a year? Cash. 1 to 5 years? Bonds/fixed income. 5+ years? Equities. Simple. The fear here is usually access anxiety. People worry, what if I need the money right now? But in the modern world, liquidity is rarely an issue. You can sell a bond fund or a stock index fund and have the cash in your checking account in 2 days. Even treasury bills are highly liquid. The idea that you need instant debit card access to $50,000 is a movie scenario, not real life. Unless you are paying a ransom demand at 3 a.m. on a Sunday, 2 days of settlement time is fine. Don't pay the inflation tax just so you can have instant access to money you haven't touched in 5 years. That is a premium you don't need to pay. Remind yourself that liquidity is abundant in financial markets. You don't need to hold physical, digital cash to be liquid. So here is the action step. Take your total cash pile. Subtract your SWAN number. The remainder is your deployable capital. If the market scares you, don't dump it all in at once. Dollar cost average it. Move 10% of it a month for 10 months. This reduces the psychological weight of the decision. But you must have a plan to move it. Set an automated transfer. Make it boring. The goal is to wake up a year from now and realize your emergency fund is the right size, and your investment portfolio has grown by that extra $20,000 or $30,000. You will sleep just as well, but you will be richer. That is the optimization we are aiming for. One final trap to avoid: the set it and forget it trap. Your SWAN number is not a tattoo. It is not permanent. It is a living number that breathes and changes as your life changes. The emergency fund you needed at 25 is very different from the one you need at 45. If you just got tenure at a university, your income risk dropped. You can lower your cash buffer. If you just quit your job to start a consulting firm, your risk skyrocketed. You need to raise your buffer. Most people pick a number once and never revisit it. That is a mistake. You are solving today's problems with yesterday's math. Make this part of your annual financial review. Once a year, maybe around tax time, recalculate your essentials. Inflation drives expenses up, so your 3-month number from 2020 might only cover 2 months in 2026. Recalculate your multiplier based on your current job security. Then, adjust the fund. If you have too much, invest the difference. If you have too little, pause investing to top it off. It is a fluid system. Don't let a rule you made 5 years ago dictate your strategy today. Be flexible. The goal is to be efficient, and efficiency requires maintenance. Treat your cash allocation like you treat your car. It needs an oil change and a checkup every once in a while to keep running smooth. Let's recap the strategy. First, understand that cash is not risk-free. Inflation guarantees it loses value over time. Second, calculate your bare-bones essentials, not your luxury spending. Third, apply a risk multiplier of 3 to 12 months, based on your job stability, not a generic rule. Fourth, recognize that saving beyond that number yields diminishing returns on your happiness, but increases your opportunity cost. And finally, move that excess idle capital into investments that match your time horizon. This is how you optimize. This is how you stop playing defense with your entire net worth and start playing some offense. You work hard for your money. Don't let it sit there lazily while inflation eats it alive. I want to hear from you on this. Run your numbers. What is your actual SWAN number versus what you are holding right now? Are you guilty of hoarding too much cash? I read the comments, and I am genuinely curious to see how many of you are realizing you have lazy money sitting around. Drop your numbers below. It helps everyone see the reality of these calculations. If this video helped you find a few $1,000s of investable cash you didn't know you had, hit that like button. It helps the channel, and it helps the algorithm teach more people about inflation math. Thanks for watching, sleep well, and I will see you in the next one.